I feel like that happens every single week.
Hello.
Facebook Live used to have a countdown. When you hit live, it would actually count you down so you could tell when you were in fact live. And now it just has a lag. So
It's really great.
anyway, yeah, it's fantastic. So hello. Good afternoon. Welcome to This Digital Life. I'm Jane Barkley.
I'm Steph Shaw.
And we basically just talk about digital stuff every week. These are conversations that we tend to have. It matters to us because we're digital marketers, but obviously social media impacts a lot of people, so it's worth talking about and it's worth exploring.
Yeah.
So today we're going to be talking about whether or not size matters. But first,
How was your weekend?
We should catch up.
Yeah, how was your weekend?
It was okay. I've already told you that I had sort of a week last week. It was not a fantastic week.
No.
I had my cousin was in a coma. My mom.
There's always things happening in Jane's life.
I tend to, it's one of those things, right?
Yeah.
I guess I welcome that, but. We tend to have a lot of big life moments happening all the time. And last week was one of those weeks for us. So the weekend was actually kind of calm, I would say, calmer than last week was. I went to a Buck and Doe.
There you go.
Have you been to a Buck and Doe?
Are they the same as Stag and Does?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not really a big fan of them, to be honest.
To me, I've always thought of it as being kind of like a country thing. That's how I've associated it that, because growing up when I was in high school, I went to the high school that all the rural kids went to, and that was the first time I got introduced to this idea of Buck and Doe. So anyway, on Saturday we went to Buck and Doe. That was my excitement this past weekend. So, but I know that you had a fun weekend.
I went away to Collingwood, which was so much fun, and it was really nice. I told Jane I actually unplugged for the most part. It was great. I checked my phone during the morning and then once around the afternoon, but then other than that, we just enjoyed time with our friends. We cooked a lot of food, had a couple cocktails. It was fun and the weather was gorgeous, so it was nice. We had our winter jackets on, but we sat outside and it was perfect. It was
gorgeous.
Just
I love that.
Yeah, it was the first time I feel like I've unplugged in a while, and I feel like after our chat before, it pushed me to do it, which was nice.
I'm usually pretty good about that. I will say this weekend I was online a lot more than I would usually be on the weekend. I try to as much as I can. If we're not working on a weekend, which we tend to be with events, then I try not to be looking at my phone too much. But there were a couple of big things this past weekend. Yesterday we had the Junos here in Canada. That's our big music award thing. So I was sort of keeping an eye on that, watching the feed for that as it was going. And then we had the March for Our Lives, which was also crazy. Were you following that?
I followed it a bit, but since I was away, unplugged,
not
as much. I saw a bunch of this stuff when I got home yesterday.
Yes, yeah. So we both don't have cable, right?
No.
Now, so for me, I was watching it all on Twitter, the March for Our Lives, as that sort of unfolded. There are some really just incredibly powerful moments, and I found myself getting kind of emotional about it, even though, like, as Canadians, we're kind of removed from what's going on down in the US, and yet we're talking about it all the time. I'm amazed by that. Like, I find that Canadians, or at least the Canadians I know, spend a lot of time thinking about, talking about, posting about what's happening in the U.S. and politics in the U.S. more than we talk about sort of like politics in our own country.
Very true.
And we're concerned, right? Even though, it's not directly impacting us. I find Canadians are really concerned about what's going on. So anyway, the March for Our Lives was it was huge. The last number that I saw was 850,000 people, which is just crazy. Massive. And someone had said at a certain point, like, there are way more people here than there were for Trump's inauguration, which is sort of like a big deal as well. So but interestingly, that kind of segues into what we're talking about. Does size matter? Obviously, March for Our Lives, they were able to mobilize just a massive group of people, which I found it really impactful. Hopefully, they're able to continue that momentum and we can see action really coming from that. I have to say that I've been involved with a lot of, protests and marches, and I've seen a lot of them. And March for Our Lives seemed very well organized, and clearly, that they were able to get so many people together speaks to how well organized it
definitely
really was. So I really hope they're able to sort of see, some change happen for sure. Anyway, very, very, very powerful, but a good segue into what we're talking about today as well, which is, does size matter? Obviously, getting 850,000 people to do something is impactful. Size certainly matters.
Social media definitely helps with that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, in terms of the impact that it had beyond the people who marched, as I said, like, I watched all of that unfold on Twitter, right? Like, I don't have cable. I'm not watching that on TV. That's where I'm getting my news from, and live updates, like up to the second updates for what was going on for that march. But this is something that we've talked about a lot. Does size matter when it comes to social media, and size in terms of your following? Is it important to have a lot of people following you? Should you be not following people back, but have a lot of people following you? That's a common sort of misconception that we see all the time, and we're talking about this with each other quite a bit. So we wanted to put the question out to you as well. So comment below if you think that size matters online. That's the context here, people. When it comes to social media, does size really matter? And we can say that numbers don't matter, and people are very fond of saying that, but let's get real, they do. They really do matter. You can try to ignore that and say that size doesn't matter, but at the end of the day, it often does. So I think that we need to start by admitting that, because I think as online marketers, you'll hear people say that there are certain things that are more important. Engagement obviously is definitely important. Reach and conversions, if you're sort of talking about sales, but I think that we have to be realistic and say that it does mean something to people. There's a certain sort of social validation. There's a degree of authority that you get or that you earn in having a lot of followers. So, as an example of how that plays out, like if somebody follows me on Twitter, just as an example, and I go to their profile and they only have like 43 followers, I'm automatically questioning that person. Are they a real person? Are they invested? So numbers sort of matter to me from that perspective of knowing, like, is this person, invested in this space? Do they have authority in their area? Have they built themselves up? Those are sort of, numbers do indicate that. Numbers on their own are not the true indication of everything by any means, but we can't say that they don't matter at all. And I find that's the mistake that we're making, is by saying, focus on other things, numbers don't matter. They do. They really do. And, I've used this example with Steph a number of times where, we've worked with people who are in industries where numbers really, really matter. So for instance, if you're a recording artist and you're trying to get played on the radio stations want to see how many people are following you on social media, and they couldn't care less if that audience is engaged, if those numbers are real at all. They just want to see the numbers, and that's unfortunate. I think it's unfortunate because it doesn't mean everything. But that's what they want. And there are different industries like that where they just want to see the numbers, and that's what's going to get you sort of to the next level.
If they're real or fake.
That's right. And that's just sort of, it is what it is. And so, because numbers do matter, there are also all of these different ways that we, work to build up our channels. So I wanted to talk about some of those. I want to talk about how we've grown our own channels, ways that have worked for us, but I wanted to sort of talk about some of the hacks that people have developed as well, because we see this all the time, and we see how they ultimately don't work in terms of building up a truly engaged online audience, but they can work for increasing your numbers. Right? If that's the thing that you're after. So I wanted to sort of talk through some of those. Some of the hacks, And so one of the things that we've talked a lot about, because we see this happening in different ways all the time on a local level, on a much larger scale, is essentially sharing circles. And that's, I mean, they're called a lot of different things depending on the network. Instagram pods.
Yeah.
But essentially, and I, way back in the day, I was part of a group on Twitter. And so basically, the way that the sharing circles sort of played out was that you would get invited to be part of this group. And as part of this group, you could send your content out to the entire group. And I forget how many people were in that group, but they would then reshare your content, or you would say, I've posted this, and give them a link to whatever you had shared, and they would retweet it, they would reshare it with their audiences.
And you'd be taking over their audience, like getting
right.
the
So
reach
then
of them.
You're automatically then getting in front of a much larger group of people than you would on your own. And it's, exponentially increasing not just your reach, but the number of people who are sharing your content. So at first it was like, oh, this is really cool, because now, like,
Look at all these people.
Look at all these people who are getting to see my content who wouldn't have necessarily otherwise. And it looks great because it looks like all these people are retweeting me. So, you feel like this is really cool. It's really working. And over time, what I realized through this sharing circle is that the people who were resharing my content were not relevant whatsoever to me, to what I was doing, to my brand and what I wanted to build.
Yeah.
And they weren't at all relevant to my followers. Like, their networks were not relevant networks for me. So sure, it looked good that I was getting all of these retweets and stuff, but ultimately it was just completely irrelevant. There were other issues too, like, not everybody in the group was good about sharing stuff. So you would share their stuff and then they wouldn't share yours. And so there are little things like that. But I think ultimately what I found is that it was falsely inflating my numbers and not getting me anywhere.
Yeah, it's not organic or authentic at that point.
So now, because of that experience, I can also see it. So there's one account that we've talked about that does that just, it's the sort of, once you know that that's happening, you can really spot it, right? You're like, oh man, that piece of content, there's no way that actually got authentic retweets. Like, you can just spot it much more readily once you've actually, discovered that this is a thing, that people have these, sharing networks that sure get you greater distribution, and sure they'll help increase your numbers, but ultimately don't.
At the end of the day, it's not really. At the end of the day, it's not really helping much.
No.
We were also saying another one is Jane, we found this one, going to celebrities and following them.
Yes, So I'll talk about this in a minute too. In terms of growing my own following, for the most part, I've done that very organically. But with Instagram in particular, for me, especially because I'm a little bit older and it is definitely like a younger person's game on Instagram, I've found it really difficult. So at a certain point, I took like a couple of weeks, and like every day I went and I watched all of these YouTube videos to figure out like every single Instagram hack out there and test them to see if they worked. And that was one that does really work. And
crazy.
It's so stupid.
It's crazy.
So basically what you do is you go to, popular celebrities, the big celebrities who have great big followings on Instagram, and follow them and like their content. You can do that too. I found that you don't even have to do that. You just follow them. And then people are actually looking at who's recently followed those accounts. So then they'll go follow you. And so you will, like, if you did that every single day, you would find your numbers increase. And I certainly did. It takes time. It's a little bit tedious. But it does really work. Now, the problem with that is that the people who are following those celebrities, are they actually relevant for you?
No. And
probably not.
And I feel and I feel like a lot of those people who follow you, if you don't follow them back, a lot of them fall off and unfollow you. So you may get a spike of 20 new followers in one day, but how many are actually going to stay there?
True, exactly. Right. So you will lose a lot of those followers. But that's one that I found is pretty effective. And on Instagram too, it's just like, I mean, you could really aggressively go in every single day and be commenting on different.
That's one of the ways I grew mine.
It's just, and liking is okay, but commenting is better.
And I believe Instagram has a rule. I think it's more than, unless you write more than 3 words, it takes it as spam. That's what I'm pretty sure. I will figure that out and put it in the comments below. But I'm pretty sure, because that was one thing too, that people were just following hashtags and they just had an auto bot that was doing it, basically.
Yes, yeah.
So I believe it's 3 words or something in a emoji or something, but
yeah. Yeah, so there are different hacks that you can find and they work to increase your numbers. So if you're in a position, I think especially when you start out on any channel, which I mean, most people shouldn't be starting out anymore. Like that's, yeah. But you know, in the beginning or when you have fewer numbers, it's definitely harder then. It gets easier over time. So like, for instance, when I started on Twitter, which was like, I don't know, like 8 years ago or something. It was a really slow burn at first and you can get really, really frustrated. I would say whenever you're within the first 1,000 on a platform, that's when it feels like it's the slowest going.
Yeah, I still haven't reached that.
Yeah. So, well, and once you hit certain like milestones like 1,000, you'll notice that you automatically start gaining more followers anyway, just because you've kind of hit that level.
Itself.
That's right. So like now I'll get far more followers per day than I did in the beginning, just because I have more followers, right? So there again, when you're saying size doesn't matter, it does, because when you have 1,000 followers, you're going to get fewer followers and less frequently than you do when you have more followers. That's just the way that it works. It sort of increases exponentially. So size does matter.
Yeah.
But I also wanted to talk about, this is really contentious and I realize that, but I have to draw this out into the light because people frequently wonder, should I buy followers?
Yeah.
And if you search it anywhere online, digital marketers are going to say, no, don't do it. It's the worst. Just don't bother with buying followers. And I'm going to maybe ruffle some feathers and say, you know what, it's a little bit of BS. And here's why, okay? I'm not recommending that anybody buys followers. I'm really not. And both of us have worked, you know, on different channels, growing them over time. We put a lot, like a ton
it's a lot of time
into developing our networks and our clients' networks. But here's what I'm going to say about buying followers is that, you know, yes, digital marketers are going to tell you absolutely don't buy followers. And the reason why is because those followers are not going to be authentic. They're not going to increase your engagement either, right? So you can have 100,000 followers, but if your content is just going out into, you know, this black hole and not doing anything, you know, you're not having conversations, people don't care, then it's not meaningful for you. So you always have to figure out like, what's the thing that I'm trying to achieve, and then find strategies that help you achieve that. And just buying followers is not going to help you achieve any strategy other than looking like you have a lot of followers.
Yeah.
Where that is going to be effective is that the more followers you have, the more you'll gain. And you can tell me that I'm wrong. I know that that's true. The more followers you have, the more you will gain, because the more followers you have, again, it has this exponential factor that people are more likely, they're more inclined to follow you back if you have a solid following. Now, my caveat to that is that
and next.
People and another thing. So there are obvious signs when things are out of whack, right? So people will notice if one day you have, you know, 750 followers and then the next day you have 14,000.
Yeah.
I also say that depending on where you are in the ecosystem, so for instance, for us in the community that we're in, you know that people will only be at a certain level, right? Like there aren't a lot of people in our community that are going to have like 100,000 followers just based on our community.
No.
Right? So on a local level. So if you find some sort of random person who has a following like that, it's going to look weird.
Yeah.
Another thing is that if you see an account that's got a huge number of followers and they're not following anyone back, that can look really fishy too, because that's generally only going to be the case if you're sort of like celebrity level status, right? So yeah, I would say in terms of buying followers, there are some industries, as I said, you know, the music industry being one of them, but that's just one example, where they will be much more inclined to buy followers because that's how they're going to get radio play. And the radio stations don't care. They just want to see the numbers. So I could never go to a recording artist and tell them, no, don't buy followers. Like, I mean, they're going to do what they're going to do anyway. What I would say is I totally get that numbers are important, but that's not an entire strategy in itself, right? But I do find that like we're so quick to say don't buy followers, and I completely agree with that. It is not an effective strategy, but again, you can't ignore the fact that
for some
size does matter. And those numbers do matter. They're just not all important in and of themselves. So I wanted to throw that out there because a lot of the people who are out there telling you don't buy followers have bought followers. So just, you know what I mean? And I think that it's just like, let's be realistic and understand that some people do it and some people benefit from it.
Definitely.
So for me, in terms of growing my own channels, it's been more like I've tried the hacks and you see that they don't really work in terms of building something meaningful online, which is what I want to do. So, but speaking of growing our channels, why don't you talk about, you really have invested in your channels and in your brand. So how has that worked for you on different networks in terms of growing your own audience? How has that journey been for you?
So Twitter, I'll start with Twitter. Twitter's one I've been more focusing on the past year or so. I think I'm up to 600 and something followers, almost 700. I'm getting there.
On Twitter.
Basically, it's just being active. That's one thing I will say with any social media channel. You have to be on your channels. You can't just post out content once in a while. For Instagram, I really focus on everything being very branded. I use almost the same filter on every single photo. My content goes out at a specific time.
You're really good with Instagram. Like your feed is quite tailored.
It's very tailored, which sometimes does suck because my personal and my business Instagram are the same one. So sometimes I do just want to post a photo, but it doesn't go with my feed. So that's the one thing I do like about Instagram stories. I'll just throw it up on my story.
Right.
But I use an app called Unum specifically, and that's been amazing. It helps you pre-plan out your Instagram feed. So it already loads up what you already have on Instagram, and then you can put in what photos you want to go next and see if all the photos match and everything, if the colors are nice. So that's basically what I've done for Instagram, and honestly, a lot of engagement. I follow and interact with similar accounts similar to me, and that's how I've also gotten their audience.
And what are you at on Instagram? I kind of forget.
I think I'm around 4,500. I think around there. Keep growing. And there's times where I'm more active. When we were laughing, as much as we work in digital media, sometimes we forget about our own stuff because we're too busy focusing on our client stuff, which is so funny. You would think our stuff we'd be on it every day, but at the end of the day, our clients come first. So
absolutely,
there's times where I feel like I have 4 photos set up for my own account for the next few days and I'm good. And then there's times where it's been 2 weeks and I'm like, well, I haven't posted on my own channel. But yeah, no, I would say at the end of the day, a lot of it is engagement and pre-planning my feed.
Yes, pre-planning is so key. Every time that I go into a client situation and talk to them about how to get strategic, that's always the first thing that we sort of talk about because you can't get ahead of it otherwise.
No.
Like you're not really doing it strategically if you're not sort of ahead of yourself.
Yeah.
I find for my own stuff, I don't do that. It's far more in the moment, especially now than I think it ever has been. Now,
but it's very authentic. Yours is very authentic. I
hope so. I would hope so because I've always tried to do that online, to carve out my voice and to be as fully me as I can.
Yeah.
Also having boundaries because I share a lot of very personal stuff. And so that can be tricky. Like my brand has very much been built on being willing to be vulnerable about difficult things and having difficult conversations, even with people who have, the polar opposite view. I've really tried to be careful about developing a voice and speaking in a way that would allow for healthy conversation around things, and not just internet screaming. But it means that I've also had people reach out to me, on my personal Facebook, or they'll email me, and it can be difficult to have boundaries, in that sense, because some of the stuff that I have talked about is very, very deeply personal. And so every time I publish anything, I have to be very committed to what it is that I'm publishing, because it can be kind of sensitive. But on my own channels, Instagram is the exception for me, because as I said, I spent a couple of weeks, I guess it was maybe last year, or probably around that. It feels like it was about a year ago to me, where I just went through and I watched every single video I could about like every last hack out there. And I'm sure there have been new ones developed since, but, and I just tried everything to see like what truly works in terms of building an audience on Instagram, because Instagram is really frustrating if you're older. I think some people have really mastered it, so maybe I shouldn't make it an age thing, but I do find that like, I've said to Steph, like, if we posted the exact same thing, like she would get 200 likes and I would get like 30. And we've tested this too with my son Noah, who's 20, and we'll post the same exact picture and he just immediately gets like hundreds of likes, and I'll get again like 30. And so there is an age thing at play on Instagram, and it's something that I've been kind of frustrated by. I'm also not very glamorous. Like, Instagram is a pretty glamorous platform, and I'm not a glamorous person. So it's hard to figure out what to post there. But on Twitter, it's really been, I've been there for years, and it's been a long build. I'm at just over 6,000 followers on Twitter. I'm hovering around there, and that's been years and years of investing in this space. Posting consistently definitely helps, and also engaging in things that are trending, but in a smart way. Like, I find that some people will try to
just jump on anything,
just exploit hashtags because they throw their 2 cents in because they know they're going to get more eyeballs on their stuff. And I don't like that.
Such a pet peeve.
I think that's really icky.
Yeah.
So
don't do that.
Well, and it can be really effective, right? It's like, here's the popular thing that everybody's looking at, so why not get myself out in front of these people? But again, for me, it has to be kind of relevant to my brand, what I'm trying to build, the conversations that I feel I can and should be involved in. But public speaking, I found, like, I've done a lot of public speaking, and every time I do public speaking, I gain a ton of followers from that. So that's definitely a boost. And then also Twitter chats. I haven't done that as much.
Oh no, I haven't done a Twitter chat in a while.
But that I've always, like, I've never participated in a Twitter chat and not gained followers.
Sure.
Every single time you'll get at least one by participating in Twitter chats. And there's a Twitter chat for everything. Any industry that you're in, there'll be a Twitter chat out there for you. And certainly when it comes to social media, like, there's a lot of digital influence sort of stuff. So that can be really effective as well. But so that's been Twitter. Really, again, it's just consistently posting good. I hope that my content is good. I don't like saying
I think so.
My content's so good. No, but posting good content and doing that frequently, that might be cliche because you've probably heard that if you're trying to build an online audience, but it really is. It's the best way to gain followers that are going to stay and who care about what you're doing. It's like, I say this to my students all the time. I teach into a social media program, and like, if you're not doing cool shit, no amount of posting is going to take care of that for you. So do cool shit. That's what you need to do. And good things, sort of do cool shit.
Yeah. It's a good Monday motto.
that's really, I think, the best thing that you can do to grow your
and
audience.
I honestly think the one thing that social media is craving right now, when we were talking about taking social media back in the previous video or 2 previous videos before, is just being authentic. I feel like we can point out more because we're in the digital media world when things aren't authentic, so it makes you look at it and just kind of brush over it. But
it's true, like, because we spend so much time in the digital space, there are things that really stand out to us, or I find that things become cliche so quickly because it, like, you're just seeing it so much. So like when we're talking about followers and that imbalance where it's like, this looks fishy, that's because we're in it so much that really stands out, and it might not stand out to everybody. Right? You might not notice, you might not even care, but these are things that we sort of witness a lot, so they've become quite obvious, and you can spot who's really invested and who isn't. So anyway, does size matter? Those are some of our thoughts about it, but we want to hear from you as well. Do you think size matters, and what's your experience online too in terms of building your own audience online? What is the experience you've had, or the challenges that you may have had in doing that? What's really worked for you? We would love to hear that. It could help someone else in growing their online audience as well. So throw that up in the comments and let us know if you think size matters. And we won't be back next Monday. It's Easter Monday, so don't come back until the following Monday. And we'll be back live on Facebook. So have a great Easter weekend, everybody, and thanks for watching.
Bye, guys.
See ya.